Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it's recording
Yeah.
also. It says it's recording on the computer. Uh, I don't do this more often, so I just hope everything gets recorded as per. Uh, yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's disabled.
One second. Now try.
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to just quickly go through what exactly um, my current way of operating is. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so right now these are my main priorities, as in um, the upper one, like I've arranged it like this, and the upper one would be what people would call divine or God, or they say that, and
Okay.
sometimes I think of it as this. So this becomes the top of my priority, and I don't have a method or a path to work on this. But I've kept it there because I think it's one of the most important aspects to me while I'm having this life experience.
Hmm.
And on these two flanks, I put health and wealth, and health could involve everything from physical, emotional, psychological to basically just maintaining myself in a healthy, energized kind of state. And wealth could mean abundance in terms of any sort of relationship that I've ever had, having with time or with money. So that I put it as wealth in general. And I feel like all of these are centered around relationships with people, with the environment, with ecosystem, with things, with spirits. So this entire basis of this happens on my attitude about what kind of approach do I take towards life and to all of the events that are happening. So this is the basic area that I'm working on, and this is just to communicate to myself so that I look at it and I can remind myself that yeah, this is what the plan is, or this is what I'm in for.
So can I just ask some very simple basic question?
Yeah,
Why, is there a reason for this to have the double, like an A forming the center? Because otherwise, all sides could have been connected, like a star also.
right,
So is there a reason why?
right. Um, Basically, all of these aspects are actually saying the same thing, but in different ways. Meaning they're not that separate. They're actually the
Yeah, yeah.
same thing, but I've put it separately so that I have some direction to work on in practical matters.
And when you
And
say relationships,
hmm,
this includes both within family and outside family.
yeah, with the self, with the family, with things, objects, spirits,
Okay, okay, okay,
just the quote unquote relationship with everything.
okay. Understood. Yeah.
So for a while, I've been chasing the sense of accomplishment, and I haven't really found it. And in many circumstances, like one of the things that I don't understand about you in particular is when you pray to some higher spirit, or when you pray to like higher guidance. And I keep thinking to myself, but what could be higher than oneself?
Yeah, yeah,
If one is consciousness, then how come, like, why do we have to create these sort of hierarchies to look up to something? And
yeah.
it's not coming from a place of pride, but I don't
No,
want
no.
to be humble about it also, like.
Sounds good. So that's
So
a. Do you want the answer now or later together?
no, no, this is the thoughts that I have. And
Okay.
when I have these sort of thoughts, I find it difficult because the sense of mm, having experienced that which is needed to be experienced, or having seen that which is, I many times I found myself referring to it as the pinnacle of human existence. So like if I believe that I have experienced that, it it just doesn't magically make my more site specific, worldly problems or challenges go away.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
for some reason it does not give me a way to deal with a lot of issues that I'm currently facing.
And this accomplishment you're
So,
talking about is also externally verified, Vala, I guess.
um, I
Like,
don't know. I don't know because some of them are, but some of them really aren't. Meaning, you can just give yourself, okay, I've accomplished something. But if somebody does not actually validate it, then you won't even need to call it accomplishment. It's just something that is. You don't have to say it's an accomplishment or it's a defeat, or you don't have to categorize it at all.
yeah,
It's only when the external viewpoint comes that you can categorize something.
yeah.
So to a lot of people, it seems like, I'm not going anywhere. Like before, I was chasing IIT, and then, like, when I was doing engineering, I left that, and then I'm chasing NID. And then now, when if I feel like leaving NID, my parents are like, oh, why don't you look at Harvard or MIT? And it's like the chase is just going and going, and I feel like there's less and less place to stand.
Yeah.
And I don't even, I don't know why I'm doing this. When I think
Mhm.
about how I make decisions, I found that anything that has a, like the seed, if it is a rational decision, the same sense of rationality that I use to arrive at the decision, I can use it and, destroy the decision itself. If I give myself this is the reasoning, then I look back at the reason, and then it
It
doesn't go
is.
anywhere. It's sort
It
of,
doesn't hold true
yeah,
anymore, which means the same reason your mind can basically create both duality for the two
exactly,
different answers for the same situation, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that sort of, there's tensions in all directions. Like for example, my relationship with wealth. I'm not happy where I am financially, and if I leave college, then I have to start working. So, but I have a very strange relationship with wealth, which is, I feel like I'm not even allowing myself to move in any direction because it's just like being held very still. And I keep thinking, do I need to really go somewhere? Because if I really want contentment, then, I should be able to give it to myself now. Because like over here, how I've said that there's a road and there's a destination. But then if I look at myself, I see that I'm also the road and the destination itself. So yeah, so that
Yeah.
these sort of thoughts keep coming, and to a lot of people, including myself, I feel like I haven't really done anything or moved at all in a while. And that comes back to me because right now I'm dependent on my parents, highly dependent on my parents in terms of, especially financially. So when they say take ownership of your life, then I'm just thinking, like, where do I fit into this? Like, I feel like all of these forces just, on one hand, everything is happening through me, but then I'm also expected to say that, no, I did it. Or, sometimes when I say I did it, there is a sense of credit or applause. People enjoy it. But then on the same side, there's a responsibility and blame. It's like, no, you did it. You have to take ownership for that action. So I find it kind of difficult to, negotiate that relationship also, because you're perceiving that not everything is done by you, but you still have to perform that identity of saying, or identify with the one who's doing things. And one of the other things that comes is when you quote unquote reach a certain spiritual state, then there are certain behaviors that are expected from you socially, that this is how you need to behave, this is how you need to see. Because when I talk about these things with a lot of people, they say, oh, I get where you're coming from, I understand, but you're not happy, you're not blissful. And I'm thinking, but where is this coming from? If I tell somebody that, hey, you're already enlightened, then they're not going to believe it because they want certain behaviors. So it's like, you have to negotiate that
Mm.
fact that, okay, you have quote unquote seen what needs to be seen, but even though everything is non-meaningful or non-purposeful or non-rational, you still have to negotiate all of the tugs of desire in terms of, wealth or sex or anything that is quote unquote materialistic or hedonistic, because those are not going away, or they're not really meant to go away. And that for me leads to a lot of frustration when I contemplate. And it's like once, I don't know if it's true, but I feel like once you've tried to commit suicide or seriously considered it as an option, then all the time it's like a, I won't say it's a disease, but it's like a disease kind of. It's always at the back of your mind that, instead of going through all of this, what if this is a dead end? And many times I feel like giving up in the most, in the easiest way, or I'm not saying it's easy, but quote unquote easiest way that I perceive it. A lot of the times I don't commit to the decisions I've taken because I keep thinking about just ending it all. So, and basically this whole idea of what I'm doing now, because I don't want to just keep talking about these things. Lately I've found that I really need to start taking concrete steps now. Whatever's happening in this moment, I need to turn it around. And basically, I don't like where I am in many aspects, so I wanted to take concrete action now. And one of the things that I see some scope is in terms of getting an education, because in many ways I'm not really done studying. I have a lot of academic endeavors that I have, and I want to experience them. But then I struggle with the systems that I'm part of. And there's this idea that knowledge is handed down from a top down approach. And when you create a hierarchy, there's obviously a way to look at it as bottom up also. But I'm more interested in, is there a way to just, even out the ground and let there be a flow where you're just making knowledge in the moment, but not really passing on your conditioning to one another, but just interacting and engaging in an honest way. So if there's some way to have a bi-directional flow. And one of the things that you had asked before is in terms of mediocrity, no matter what system, whether it's in the highest or top performing colleges or any system, there's always the people who perform really well at the top, and then there are some people at the bottom, and then there are middle. And I was thinking that, well, this is obviously going to happen when you celebrate certain traits, certain kinds of uniqueness over others. And when you create such sorting, then obviously some people are going to end up in the top and some people at the bottom, some in the middle. So I was thinking this feeling of mediocrity that I have right now is a bit new, because when I was younger, I used to perform well. And I even used to think that it was as a result of me and my efforts. But then, growing up, I just realized the system just sort of caters to certain individuals. It's not really that I was doing good. It's just that it just happened in a convenient way. And I really value people who are able to be aware of these sorts of things, or a system that encourages this sort of awareness. And like, for example, um in my current college in NID, then they say that we appreciate critical thinking, but then in some ways I'm not really allowed to use that critical thinking onto the system which I'm part of, because when I'm participating in it, I cannot criticize it. It's almost like when I point out something, I'm expected to just ignore it and say, okay, no, leave this one alone, because you're already in the system, so you have to see yourself through the end of the tunnel. But everything outside of it you can criticize, and it doesn't really work that way. There is really no strong boundary between inside and outside. So I would really like to be a part of some system which is constantly appraising itself, where we're not just passive about what is happening inside and trying to be active on the outside, where there's a constant flow of information both inside outside, knowing that these two are interlinked. And in terms of cross disciplinary, for me it's not enough that you put things in boxes and then create pathways to go from one discipline to another. And even if you have a sort of centralized connection, it's still not enough for me, because in a truly cross disciplinary environment, you don't have to blur any boundaries. There are no boundaries to begin with. And starting from that basic sort of understanding where everything is interconnected, and you don't need to really go from one room to another or one person to another pretending like you've changed your clothes or made a drastic change. Just seeing aspects of everything in everything else if there is some sort of academic framework which allows that. And especially in terms of the frustration that comes out in academic situations, I feel like many times there's no open dialogue or engagement or even willingness to address it. It's almost like we're using irritants as pedagogical tools. Like we're using the whole point of frustration and creative limitation so that people actually come out with more creative work, like forcing them into tighter spaces so that people actually creatively, find a way out of it. And, maybe I'm not that interested in this sort of work where maybe I'm interested in more student-led curriculum where um, we can come together as an institute and figure out what we're learning, why we're learning, and how to even carry out this learning process and how to measure it, how to evaluate it. Like, if there's a way to participate in the setting of the curriculum, not just getting it handed down just because just because it's tradition or just because it's old or quote unquote tried and tested. And all of these things are coming to me because of how we relate to time and our sense of patience, which is linked to how do we see the world, how do we appreciate the world, and what kind of identities can we perform. If I'm thinking that, okay, I'm going to talk to Gaurav tomorrow, then I immediately place myself into a position where, Tushar is caught in the movement of time from past to future. And if I don't want to perform such an identity, then it becomes very hard because I have to work with dates, with minutes, with seconds. And I'm just thinking all of these are just a kind of illusions. Because if I look at my own life experience, have I really engaged with minutes and seconds and hours? Because the quality of time is so different from how you measure it. 1 hour says nothing, or 45 minutes really means nothing because the experience that we're having now is based on duration. And for me, all of these things can change in my life experience, and I don't want to just live out a life where I never give myself the chance to experience newer identities which are not limited to time. Most of the adults that I've spoken to always tell me that you're too strong and rigid, and they give me the story of the tree which breaks in the wind, but when the bamboo is more flexible, it's able to withstand that sort of um, force or pressure. And I keep thinking about the wind itself, which really isn't really doing anything. Everything, the wind itself is not really solid at all. And I feel like I want to identify with the wind itself because there are many aspects to it, flowing contradictory, flowing in all directions, but somehow everything ends up in the place which it is meant to end up in. And I'm thinking, is there an academic structure? I'm saying structure in the most flexible way possible, which actually wants to be um, not non-rigid, which does not want to be rigid, basically, which wants to evolve with the kind of students who've come. Because if you keep your goal as wealth creation, then you're always going to think, how am I going to create wealth? You're not going to think, can I create a society where this idea of money is not really required? That thought is never going to come. So I'm wondering, is what I'm looking for an academic setting, or do I want to work as some do I want to work in some way? Because when I've been looking at how things are going, at the pace at which things are going, I feel like many people think like how I'm thinking. They look at themselves as performing a certain identity. So then, what skills you have, what work you've done, that does not become that important. But your attitude towards what identities are you willing to perform, that becomes important in a society where everybody just thinks of themselves as consciousness, but consciousness as willing to perform certain identities. Like maybe for a week I want to do this sort of work, and maybe after that I want to do this sort of work, because they're not really that different. They're all linked. So I was thinking, do I want to again enroll myself into some institute? Do I want to study? There's all of these thoughts and confusions as to what exactly I want to do. And Yeah, so that's why I wanted to talk to you and figure out my major quote unquote issue right now is figuring out how to be enthusiastic about something and also gaining some level of independence from my parents financially. If I'm not able to put my knowledge to the service of anybody, then I feel like it's a very, I don't want to call it a painful burden, but I don't know how else to say it. It just feels like um, it's very self-defeating. So how do I use whatever I've understood or to the service of all of us? I want to try figuring that out. And how do I also figure out a way to, if I really need to commercialize and monetize my identity, then how do I do that? Because you often said that being in the media means that you can't be yourself. And I think for me, there's no rigid structure as the self because I keep changing myself very drastically and I'm willing to perform all sorts of interesting identities, even multiple identities in a single day. So I'm thinking maybe I can take some pointers from you on how to monetize my identity. So that was about it.
Okay. No, when there could be some miscommunication about the you can't pay yourself in media. Can do you remember exactly what I said and what was the
Um,
context?
yeah, so people were talking about art attack, and then you were saying that that wasn't all me because sometimes on TV or on camera you can't necessarily be yourself. You will have to mold yourself to a
Yeah, yeah,
certain
yeah,
audience.
yeah.
So yeah,
Okay,
so I was
okay,
just saying that
okay.
I feel like I don't really mind it.
No, no, I understand. Can you go back to your that document? That's very interesting. In
Yeah.
fact, their whole monologue from start to finish. If you
Sorry.
just put this video online, it's a very good. It kind of reflects a lot of anxiety which exists. Okay, I can surely say that I used to have a similar kind of existential crisis very often. Okay,
Okay.
now there are some positive signs also in your existential crisis because you're not ready to, or it's not easy for you to accept what is given to you around you.
Mm,
I keep saying there is a law of duality which exists very strongly. Now the thing is ki
mm.
those who can identify that duality itself is a big awareness. If you can identify the duality, if you can,